that you care. Yes, baby, if you love me, then please show me that you care. 'Cause
Eventually, once I got out of high school, I went to UMass, Amherst, as a matter of fact, and then eventually dropped out of there to start my first real serious band. As a consequence of doing that, I met a man who would eventually become my husband. We started a band together. A number of different people gave me cassette tapes, because it was cassettes back then. There were no CDs yet. They gave me cassette tapes of material that they thought I should be singing. And each of them gave me the same songs. So without knowing one another, each of these people who knew music thought that this is the material I should be singing. Well, as many people are wont to do, I don't like being told what to do, so I put those cassettes in my gig bag and forgot about them. And then maybe a couple of years later, I was stuck in Vermont during a snowstorm, and I found these cassettes. I was like, oh, I'll finally listen to these. I don't have anything to do. Pulled them out, put them in my Walkman, because that's what we all used back then. And that's when I discovered that these different three people had given me the same exact material. It was people I'd never heard of. As a result of those cassettes that I just mentioned to you and that material that I found, strong female singers from the 40s and 50s primarily. That music is a very special kind of music because it has a lot of sophistication in it, but it also has this real kind of gut-buckety quality to it, and that exact thing is what appealed to me. As a result of that, I started a band which was just a one-set tribute. It wasn't even a band. It was just going to be a show, one show, as a tribute to these three artists. Within a few months of doing our first gig, my band and I had been entered into the Boston Blues Challenge by the Boston Blues Society, and we were participating in the Boston Blues Competition. So it was a series of events, gigs, and over the course of a few weeks, and it got narrowed down into a few bands, and finally there was one night where all the finalists would perform, and out of those finalists would be selected the winner of the Boston Blues Challenge. So we had just finished performing, and we're waiting for the judges to come back out with the results. A really drunk guy, really drunk guy came up to me and said, "Michelle, you're awesome. You're like filet mignon. But unfortunately, we all just want a cheeseburger." I didn't even know what to say back. Wouldn't have mattered. He was too drunk. But what I didn't realize was that that one statement was more accurately than any other statement I've ever heard or made, pretty much summed up my entire career thus far. You know how you always think of the right thing to say long after the event is past? Yeah, so I wish that what I had said back to that guy, again, not that he would have heard me because of his extreme inebriation, but I wish I had said, "Don't you know what an awesome cheeseburger you can make out of filet mignon?" We won the competition in Boston. We went to Memphis. We won the competition in Memphis. I got a record deal as a result of it. We started making records. I started touring all around. I was, in the magazines. It was crazy. It was crazy. I just didn't realize that the money was everything. So I was constantly getting offers. "Oh, hey, would you like to go open for Tom Petty at the Super Bowl, Michelle?" "Well, yeah, I sure would." "Well, how am I going to get 6 guys down to Florida the day after tomorrow?" After a few years of that kind of thing, the frustration of it really got to me. I didn't realize that you really have to learn. You got to put a team in place. You need access to the funds that you need to make the things happen. You need to be able to pay for touring. I was just caught in the middle of this whirlpool, and there was no one to help me. I went on for, I don't know, probably close to 10 years. I put out 4 albums, getting more and more unhappy, more and more desperate, more and more depressed. And I just kept going because that's what you do. And then finally, I just crashed and burned. I couldn't handle it anymore. It weirded me out all the way around. And of course, I interpreted it that I was a failure. You know, that I didn't have what it took, that it was my fault, that I was, missing. I was just defective. Obviously, I made a mistake, I don't think I'm the only person to feel that way. Maybe because of the circumstances, it was, amplified, magnified. But it took me another 10 years to climb back out and be comfortable with being alive again. I was really depressed. I was full of shame, at having failed. But underneath it all, there must have been something, a desire to survive, a desire to be comfortable and to feel good that kept me going. An awful lot of people don't keep going. That level of depression and angst and shame. Shame's the big one. It kills a lot of people. A lot of people don't make it to the other side. I didn't have the emotional equipment to realize that when the guys, after the gig, when they were all hanging out, until late hours of the morning, drinking and playing cards, that they didn't want me because I'm the band leader. And probably it was because I was a woman, because they do want to talk in ways that I find offensive, and they didn't want to have to worry about it. Now, I don't care anymore. They have the right to live their lives in the way they want to live it, and it doesn't have anything to do with me. And frankly, I don't want to hang out with them either, because I don't want to stay up all night smoking and drinking and playing cards. I want to go to bed. I'm more balanced now, but back then, I was constantly getting messages that were telling me, who do you think you are? I didn't have the emotional equipment to say, phooey on Yui. But I did keep going. I was just desperately unhappy. Now I look back on it and I think, wow, you were that miserable, and yet you kept going, Michelle. That's actually kind of cool. One time, when we went to that competition in Memphis, it was a big deal. I mean, huge. This is the biggest thing in the blues world, this competition and this awards weekend. So the band's already on stage playing. I'm standing in the wings waiting to go on. And this stagehand comes up to me and says, "Excuse me, ma'am, the wives usually wait over there."
And you said,
"Excuse me," and I walked on stage. But I felt shame over that for some reason. Like that I wasn't woman enough, I wasn't sparkly enough, I didn't have a low-cut enough dress. If I'd had on more makeup, like that guy wouldn't have made that mistake. That's probably true. I got a lot of stuff like that.
if you were speaking to a young 20-year-old woman who wanted to go into the music business, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to make sure that they take really good care of themselves, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and that I have this thing that I use, I call it sitting on top of the beach ball. And I picture myself sitting on top of a gigantic beach ball out in the middle of the ocean. And my job is to, as much as possible, remain upright on the beach ball. And as you can imagine, that's an almost impossible task because you're constantly tipping over and going underwater and, things are happening, giant waves come along. But your intention is to be upright on the beach ball. And that intention can carry you through a lot of stress because intention is everything. So I would tell them to develop their own version of sitting up on top of the beach ball in the ocean, like whatever makes sense for them, and to always have that be their first priority before anything else. And after that, things have a funny way of falling into place.
With me, 'cause I'm an evil gal, and I want to set you free.